I was cutting into my third helping of turkey when my mother stood up at our Thanksgiving table, pointed directly at me, and announced to our 20 gathered relatives that I needed to leave immediately and stop being a financial leech on this family. The dining room went completely silent. My cousin Bradley stopped mid-chew. Aunt Carol's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. My younger sister Emma looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. My father David suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes and refused to meet my eyes. I calmly set down my fork, looked around at the shocked faces staring back at me, and quietly said, "All right then," before standing up. What nobody in that room knew was that I had been secretly supporting our entire family for 3 years. Walking up the creaky stairs to my childhood bedroom, I could hear the uncomfortable murmur of voices resuming below. The same bedroom where I used to dream about making something of myself, where I studied computer programming late into high school nights, while my parents worried about my future. Now, as I pulled my old duffel bag from the closet, I thought about how wrong they had been about everything. 3 years ago, my father lost his job at the Riverside manufacturing plant when they downsized their workforce by 60%. At 52, David found himself competing against younger workers for positions that paid half of what he used to earn. Within 6 months, our family was facing foreclosure on the house I grew up in. The bank had already sent 2 notices, and my parents were having hushed, desperate conversations behind closed doors that they thought Emma and I couldn't hear. That was right around the time my consulting business started taking off. I had spent 4 years after college building relationships with small community banks across the Midwest, helping them upgrade their financial software systems. My specialty was creating custom solutions that streamlined their operations while maintaining the personal touch these smaller institutions prided themselves on. By the time Dad lost his job, I was pulling in over $200,000 annually, though I lived in a modest apartment and drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic. I started small. An anonymous payment to catch up their mortgage. A mysterious check that covered their overdue utility bills. I created fake scholarship foundations to pay for Emma's college tuition, complete with official-looking paperwork that made her believe she had won academic merit awards. I established shell companies that sent my parents fake dividends and investment returns carefully crafted to look like smart financial decisions my father had supposedly made years earlier. The beautiful irony was that while I was working 16-hour days to fund their comfortable lifestyle, they constantly criticized my career choice. My mother would tell neighbors that I was just a computer guy who lived paycheck to paycheck. My father would shake his head and wonder why I didn't get a real job with benefits and security. They had no idea that their stable, comfortable life was built entirely on my success. I was folding my clothes into the duffel bag when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Midwest Community Mortgage Services. Strange timing, but I answered anyway. "Mr. Thompson, this is Janet from the mortgage department. I'm calling about the Patterson family account. We show that you've been making payments on their behalf, but we haven't received anything for the past 3 months. The account is severely delinquent, and we need to discuss payment arrangements immediately to avoid foreclosure proceedings." My blood ran cold. 3 months behind. That was impossible. I had been sending payments religiously every month through my automated banking system. I pulled up my phone's banking app and scrolled through my recent transactions. There they were, clear as day. Monthly payments of $2,400 to Midwest Community Mortgage, sent electronically on the 15th of every month for the past 90 days. "Ma'am, I'm showing payments sent on September 15th, October 15th, and November 15th. Are you certain they haven't been received?" "Sir, I'm looking at our system right now. The last payment we received from you was August 14th. After that, nothing. The account shows a current balance of $7,200 past due." Something was very, very wrong. As I hung up the phone, I realized that someone had been intercepting my payments. Someone who knew about my arrangement and had access to redirect the money. someone who wanted my family to fail while profiting from my generosity. And I had a terrible suspicion about who that someone might be. I grabbed my laptop and spent the next 20 minutes tracing my payment history through my banking software. As someone who specialized in financial systems, I knew exactly where to look for irregularities. What I found made my stomach drop. For the past 6 months, my mortgage payments had been electronically redirected before reaching Midwest Community Mortgage. Instead of going to account number 447821 under my parents' names, they had been systematically rerouted to account number 448103 under a different name entirely. A name I recognized immediately. Bradley Patterson, my 28-year-old cousin, who worked as a junior loan officer at Riverside Community Bank. Bradley, who was sitting downstairs right now, probably enjoying his second helping of my money-funded turkey dinner. I dug deeper into the electronic trail, using my access to banking networks that most people could never navigate. What I discovered was a carefully orchestrated theft that had been going on for months. Bradley hadn't just stolen my mortgage payments. He had been intercepting various payments I made for the family and redirecting them into his own accounts. The utility payments I sent to keep their lights on, 70% had been skimmed off the top. The car payments for my father's truck Bradley had been pocketing half, while making minimum payments to keep the vehicle from being repossessed. Even some of the scholarship money I had been sending for Emma's college had been partially diverted. In total, Bradley had stolen over $70,000 of money intended to support our family. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was discovering how he had been spending it. 3 separate charges at Paradise Casino totaling $12,000. A vacation to Las Vegas that cost $8,000. A new motorcycle worth $15,000. Premium sports betting accounts with deposits that added up to more than $20,000. Designer clothes, expensive restaurant bills, and luxury hotel stays that painted the picture of a gambling addiction funded entirely by my family's security. While my parents worried about making ends meet and believed they were surviving on fake government assistance programs and imaginary investment returns, Bradley was living it up on money meant to keep them housed and fed. I was still staring at the evidence on my laptop screen when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Bradley's voice called out cheerfully, "Nick, your mom sent me up to see if you needed help packing. She feels bad about what happened downstairs." He appeared in my doorway, all smiles and fake concern. Bradley had always been the golden child of our extended family. Tall, athletic, with the kind of easy charm that made adults trust him immediately. He played baseball in high school, got decent grades without trying too hard, and landed his job at the bank through family connections. Everyone considered him the responsible, successful one. "I brought you a beer," he said, holding out a bottle. "Figured you could use one after that scene downstairs." "Thanks," I said, accepting the bottle but not opening it. "Bradley, can I ask you something?" "Sure, cuz, anything. You work at Riverside Community Bank right in the loan department." His smile flickered for just a moment. "Yeah, that's right. Why, just curious about how electronic banking transfers work. You know, the technical side of things. I've been having some issues with my business payments lately." "Oh." He relaxed slightly. "Yeah, electronic transfers can be tricky. Lots of things can go wrong. Numbers get mistyped, accounts get mixed up. Happens more than you'd think." "Interesting. So if someone wanted to redirect a payment, how would they do that?" Now his smile disappeared entirely. Bradley sat down on my old desk chair and studied my face carefully. "Nick, what exactly are you getting at?" I closed my laptop and looked directly at him. "I'm getting at the fact that my family is about to lose their house because someone has been stealing the mortgage payments I've been sending. Someone with access to banking systems and knowledge of account numbers." The color drained from Bradley's face, but he recovered quickly. Too quickly. "So, whoa, hold on. Are you saying you've been paying your parents' mortgage, Nick? They've been getting assistance from some kind of government program. They told the whole family about it. Your dad made some smart investments a few years back, and they qualified for housing assistance because of his job loss." Bradley, there is no government program. There are no smart investments. Every dollar keeping this family afloat has come from me. And for the past 6 months, someone has been stealing that money and letting my family slide toward foreclosure while they funded their gambling addiction. Bradley stood up abruptly, his friendly demeanor evaporating completely. You're out of line, Nick. You can't just throw accusations around like that. You think I would steal from family? You think I'd let Uncle David lose his house? I don't think it, Bradley. I know it. I have the electronic records, the account numbers, and the transaction trails. I know about Paradise Casino, about Las Vegas, about the motorcycle. I know about all of it. For a long moment, we stared at each other in silence. Then Bradley's expression changed into something I had never seen before. Something cold and calculating. You know what your problem is, Nick. You think you're so much smarter than everyone else. You think because you work with computers all day, you understand how the real world works. But you don't. You have no idea what's really going on in this family. Enlighten me. Your parents don't want your help. They never did. They're embarrassed by you, by your weird job, by the way you live, by the fact that you're 30 years old and still single with no real future. The only reason I stepped in to manage their financial situation was because they asked me to. They wanted someone they could trust, someone who understood their needs. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Manage their financial situation. That's right. Your dad came to me 6 months ago. He was worried about some irregularities in their accounts, money showing up from unknown sources. He was afraid someone was laundering money through their accounts or using them for some kind of fraud. He asked me to investigate and make sure they weren't getting in trouble with the law. Bradley was lying, but he was doing it convincingly, more convincingly than I expected. Your dad specifically asked me to block any suspicious payments and redirect them until we could figure out where they were coming from. We've been building a case to turn over to federal investigators. Congratulations, Nick. You've been under financial investigation for the past 6 months. I realized then that Bradley was far more dangerous than I had given him credit for. He wasn't just a gambling addict who stumbled into theft. He was a skilled manipulator who had spent months creating a cover story that painted me as the criminal and himself as the family protector. Here's what's going to happen. Bradley continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. You're going to keep your mouth shut about your little conspiracy theories. You're going to leave this house like your mother asked, and you're going to stay away from this family's finances. Because if you try to cause trouble, I'll tell everyone that you've been trying to control them with money, that you've been stalking their financial accounts, and that you made threats against me when I tried to protect them. Who do you think they'll believe, Nick? The weird computer guy who lives alone and has no friends? Or the responsible bank employee who's been trying to keep them safe? Bradley picked up the beer he had brought me and took a long drink. Besides, I've already told Uncle David that I think I can help them with their mortgage situation. I'm planning to offer them a personal loan later today. A generous family loan that will get them caught up on their payments and keep them in their house. They'll be so grateful they'll probably insist on making me the executor of their will. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Bradley was planning to loan my family money they desperately needed, using the same money he had stolen from their support payments. He would be paid back with interest for the privilege of keeping money that belonged to them in the first place. You won't get away with this, Bradley. I already have, he said, finishing the beer and setting the empty bottle on my dresser. And if you try to stop me, you'll destroy this entire family in the process. Is that really what you want, to tear apart the people you claim to love just because your feelings got hurt? Bradley walked toward my bedroom door, then paused and turned back to me. Oh, and Nick, your mother's announcement downstairs wasn't random. I may have mentioned to her this morning that you seemed resentful about their recent good fortune. I told her I was worried you might try to guilt them into supporting you financially. I suggested she might want to make it clear that you needed to stand on your own 2 feet. He smiled that charming smile that had fooled our entire family. Welcome to the real world, cousin. Maybe now you'll finally grow up. After Bradley left, I sat on my childhood bed for a few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My cousin had not only stolen from my family, but had systematically manipulated them into viewing me as a potential threat. And judging by my mother's public humiliation downstairs, his manipulation had been devastatingly effective. I decided to test something. I wanted to see exactly how far this family's selfishness extended before I made any decisions about what to do next. I walked back downstairs to find the family cleaning up from dinner. The good china was being carefully wrapped and stored away, leftover turkey was being divided into containers, and the dining room table was being cleared of the remnants of our Thanksgiving feast. Everyone looked slightly uncomfortable when I reappeared, but they tried to act normal. Nick, sweetie, my mother said without making eye contact. I'm sorry about earlier. I think I was just stressed about the holidays and maybe had a bit too much wine. It's okay, Mom. Actually, I was hoping I could talk to everyone about something while we're all here together. Of course, honey, what's on your mind? I took a deep breath and launched into the first test. I hate to bring this up during the holidays, but I'm in a bit of a financial bind. My car's transmission went out last week, and the repair shop wants $800 to fix it. I was wondering if I could borrow maybe $50 from someone to help cover the down payment on the repairs. I can pay it back next month when my next contract payment comes in. The room fell silent. My father continued scraping plates as if he hadn't heard me. My mother's expression shifted from apologetic to annoyed. Nick, honestly, we can't keep bailing you out every time you have a problem. You're 30 years old. You need to learn how to manage money better. But Mom, it's just $50, and I said I'd pay it back. That's what you always say. Emma chimed in from the kitchen. Remember when you borrowed money for that computer equipment last year? I had never borrowed money from Emma for computer equipment. In fact, I had never borrowed money from any of them for anything ever. But I let it slide and tried a different approach. Dad, what do you think? Could you help me out just this once? David finally looked up from his plate scraping. He was wearing a brand new golf shirt that I recognized from the Riverside Country Club Pro Shop. I knew it cost $90 because I had looked at it myself 2 weeks earlier. His golf shoes were new too, probably another $150. Son, I wish I could help, but money's tight for everyone right now. You need to learn to save for emergencies instead of living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe this is a good lesson for you. Money's tight, I repeated slowly. Well, not tight exactly, my mother corrected. We've been blessed with some good fortune lately. Your father made some excellent investment decisions a few years back that are finally paying off. Plus, we qualified for some assistance programs. But that doesn't mean we can just hand out money to family members who haven't learned to be responsible. I watched my Aunt Carol nod in agreement while wearing jewelry I had never seen before. My Uncle Tom was checking his phone on what appeared to be the latest iPhone model. My cousins were discussing their spring break plans to Florida. What kind of assistance programs? I asked innocently. Housing assistance mostly, my father explained. When I lost my job at the plant, we qualified for some federal programs that help with mortgage payments and utilities. It's been a real blessing. And the investment returns. Your father was smart enough to put money into some technology stocks years ago, my mother said proudly. The dividends have been helping us stay afloat while he looks for work. I nodded thoughtfully. Technology stocks that provided monthly dividend payments, large enough to cover a mortgage and utilities. Government programs that sent consistent monthly checks without any paperwork or requirements. It was remarkable how easily they had accepted explanations that made no sense under even basic scrutiny. But more than that, it was remarkable how quickly they had adapted to a lifestyle funded by mysterious windfalls, while maintaining that they couldn't spare $50 to help their son fix his car. Maybe you should talk to Bradley, suggested Aunt Carol. He works at the bank and he might know about some programs that could help you get a car loan. Bradley's been such a blessing to this family, my mother agreed. He helped us understand all these financial assistance programs we qualified for. Without his guidance, we never would have known we were eligible. Yes, my father added. Bradley really knows his stuff. He explained how all these investment returns and government payments work. Smart young man. I looked around the room at my family, all of whom were living comfortable lives funded by my secret generosity, while refusing to help me with a small fake financial emergency. They had no idea that the smart young man they were praising had been stealing from them for months. But the final test was still to come. "Well, I guess I'll figure something out," I said. "Maybe I can take the bus to work for a while." "That's the spirit," Emma said. "A little hardship builds character." "Speaking of character, White," my mother added, "we're all very proud of how well everyone's doing. Emma's scholarship has been such a blessing, and Bradley just bought himself a beautiful new motorcycle. He's worked so hard to afford nice things." "A motorcycle?" I asked. "A gorgeous bike," Bradley said, appearing from the kitchen with a satisfied smile. "Saved up for 2 years to afford it. There's nothing like the feeling of earning something through hard work and discipline." "I'm sure there isn't," I replied. As if on cue, my mother's phone buzzed with a text message. She read it and frowned. "That's strange. The mortgage company just sent a message saying our account is past due. That must be some kind of mistake." "I'll call them tomorrow and straighten it out," my father said dismissively. "Computer systems make errors all the time." "Actually," Bradley interjected smoothly, "I've been meaning to talk to you about that. I noticed some irregularities in your account when I was helping you monitor your finances. Nothing serious, but I think there might be some confusion about payment processing. I was going to suggest that maybe I could help by providing a short-term loan to get everything caught up while we sort out the paperwork." "Oh, Bradley, that's so generous of you," my mother gushed. "That's what family is for," he replied, looking directly at me as he said it. I excused myself and walked out onto the back porch where I could hear my family through the open window, continuing to praise Bradley's generosity and responsibility while discussing my apparent inability to manage basic adult responsibilities. "I just don't understand where we went wrong with Nick," my mother was saying. "Emma turned out so well, but Nick seems lost. He's 30 years old and still can't afford to fix his own car." "Some people are just late bloomers," my father replied. "Maybe this will motivate him to finally get his act together." "I hope so," Emma added. "It's embarrassing when people ask what my brother does for work. I mean, computer consulting sounds impressive, but obviously, it doesn't pay well if he can't even afford car repairs." "Maybe he should consider going back to school," suggested Aunt Carol. "Learning a trade or something more stable. Bradley's always said that people in the financial industry do well," my mother mused. "Perhaps Nick should consider following his example." Standing on the porch in the cold November air, listening to my family discuss my failures while wearing clothes and jewelry purchased with money I earned, I finally understood the true nature of the people I had been sacrificing for. They weren't just ungrateful. They were cruel. They were small-minded, selfish people who had built their comfortable lives on my generosity while convincing themselves that I was the family disappointment. And they were about to learn exactly what disappointment really felt like. But first I needed to gather more evidence. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I stepped further away from the house and called my business attorney, Sarah Thompson. Sarah had handled my corporate contracts for 3 years, and I trusted her completely. More importantly, she specialized in financial crime and family law. "Nick, you're calling on Thanksgiving. This must be serious." "Sarah, I need legal advice about a complicated situation involving theft fraud and family finances. How quickly can you review financial documents and build a case?" "Depends on the complexity, but I can work over the weekend if it's urgent. What are we looking at?" I explained the situation in detail. The 3 years of family support, Bradley's systematic theft, the redirected payments, and the upcoming foreclosure. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification on dates and amounts. "Nick, this is a federal crime. Wire fraud, bank fraud, possibly money laundering. We're talking about felony charges that could result in serious prison time. How much documentation do you have?" "Complete electronic records of every transaction. Banking statements, account numbers, routing information, and evidence of where the stolen money went." I can also prove the family believed they were receiving government assistance and investment returns that don't exist. Good. What do you want to achieve here? Criminal prosecution, civil recovery, family reconciliation. I thought about my mother's public humiliation, my father's lecture about responsibility while wearing clothes. I bought Emma's embarrassment about my supposed failures, and the family's complete dismissal of my request for $50 in help. I want Justice Sarah, but I also want them to understand what they've lost. Is there a way to stop all financial support immediately while protecting myself from tax consequences? Absolutely. In fact, you should have structured this differently from the beginning. Anonymous gifts to family members without proper documentation create massive tax liabilities for you. We need to immediately establish that you're ceasing all financial support and transfer legal responsibility back to them. How quickly can you make that happen? I can file emergency paperwork tomorrow that terminates your financial obligations and establishes a clear legal separation between your finances and theirs. I can also prepare the criminal complaint against your cousin and file it with federal prosecutors by Monday. Do it, all of it. Nick, I need to ask. Are you prepared for the consequences of this? Your family is going to face foreclosure, repossession, and significant financial hardship. Your cousin is going to prison. This will likely destroy your family relationships permanently. I looked through the window at my family, still discussing my character flaws, while planning how to spend Bradley's generous loan of money stolen from their own support payments. Sarah, they've already destroyed our relationship. They just don't know it yet. What I'm doing is showing them the natural consequences of their choices. All right, I'll need you to send me every financial document you have tonight. Bank statements, transaction records, payment confirmations, everything. Can you do that? Absolutely. One more thing. Do you want to give them a chance to make this right before we file criminal charges? Sometimes family situations can be resolved without involving law enforcement. I'm going to give them exactly one chance, but they'll need to earn it. After hanging up with Sarah, I called my accountant, James Rodriguez. James had been managing my business finances since I started the consulting company, and he understood the tax implications of my family support better than anyone. Nick, good to hear from you. How's the holiday? Complicated, James. I need to talk to you about the family financial support situation we discussed last year. The anonymous gifts. What about them? I need to stop them immediately and restructure everything to minimize my tax exposure. Also, it turns out someone has been stealing a portion of the support payments for the past 6 months. There was a long pause. Nick, we need to meet first thing Monday morning. The tax implications of this are more serious than I think you realize. How serious? Because you've been making substantial anonymous gifts to family members without proper documentation or gift tax filings. The IRS could treat them as taxable income for you. We're talking about potentially over $100,000 in unexpected tax liability. Add to that the fact that you've been deducting business expenses while supporting family members, and you could be looking at penalties and interest that would bankrupt you. My stomach dropped. What are my options? We need to immediately establish a clear legal separation between your finances and your family's. You need to formally notify them that all financial support is ending, and why. We need to document the theft for tax recovery purposes, and we need to restructure your tax filings for the past 3 years to properly account for the gifts. Can you handle all of that this weekend? I'll have to. Nick, if you don't address this immediately, you could lose everything. The tax liability alone could force you into bankruptcy. Then let's fix it. I'll send you the same financial documents I'm sending to my lawyer. Good. And Nick, I'm sorry this happened. Your family has no idea how lucky they've been to have someone like you looking out for them. They're about to find out. After ending the call with James, I sent both professionals complete documentation of my 3 years of family support. Transaction records, bank statements, payment confirmations, account numbers, routing information, and detailed spreadsheets showing exactly how much money had gone to each family member for each purpose. The total was staggering. Over $300,000 in mortgage payments, utilities, car payments, insurance premiums, college tuition, and miscellaneous support. Money that allowed my family to live comfortably while believing they were successful and independent. Money that was about to disappear completely. While I was organizing the financial documents, my phone buzzed with a text from Bradley. "Hope you're not planning to cause any trouble, cuz. Would hate for this holiday to get any more unpleasant." I replied, "Don't worry, Bradley. I think everyone's about to get exactly what they deserve." His response came back immediately. "Glad we understand each other." But Bradley had misunderstood completely. He thought he had intimidated me into silence. He thought his threats and manipulations had convinced me to quietly disappear and let him continue stealing from my family while playing the role of their financial savior. He had no idea that I was about to systematically dismantle the comfortable illusion he had helped create and expose everyone's true character in the process. I spent the next hour documenting the family's behavior on my phone. Their discussions of my supposed financial irresponsibility. Their refusal to help with my fake car emergency. Their praise for Bradley's generosity with stolen money. Their complete dismissal of my value to the family. I also researched the legal consequences Bradley was facing. Wire fraud carried a potential sentence of 20 years in federal prison. Bank fraud added another 30 years. The monetary theft exceeded $50,000, which elevated the charges to serious felony level. But more than the legal consequences, I thought about the social consequences my family was about to face. They had spent months bragging to neighbors and friends about their good fortune, their mysterious government assistance and smart investment returns, their successful children, and their own financial wisdom. When the truth came out, they wouldn't just lose their house and cars. They would lose their reputation, their pride, and their position in the community. People they had bragged to would realize they had been living a lie built on their own son's secret generosity. And they would have to face the fact that they had driven away the person who had been keeping them afloat, not through malice or betrayal, but through simple cruelty and ingratitude. As I finished my preparations, I could hear the family inside making plans for Black Friday shopping and discussing their Christmas gift lists. They were making plans funded by money they didn't have for a lifestyle they hadn't earned, completely unaware that their comfortable world was about to collapse. But I was going to give them one chance to do the right thing. One chance to show they were capable of acknowledgement, gratitude, and basic human decency. If they failed that test, they would learn what it really meant to rely on themselves. I walked back into the house to find something that made my blood boil. My family had gone upstairs to my bedroom and was actively going through my belongings, apparently deciding what to do with my things, now that I was moving out. My mother was sitting on my bed with a box carefully packing my high school baseball trophies and academic awards. "Bradley's children would love these," she was saying to Aunt Carol. "They're just gathering dust up here anyway." My father was boxing up my old books, including first edition novels I had collected over the years, and technical manuals that had cost me hundreds of dollars. "Emma can use these for her college courses," he announced. "No point in leaving valuable books unused." Emma herself was going through my dresser drawers, pulling out clothes and accessories. "Some of these sweaters would fit me perfectly," she was telling my cousin Jennifer. Nick never really had much fashion sense anyway. But the scene that made me see red was Bradley sitting at my old desk rifling through my laptop bag and looking at my business documents with obvious curiosity. "Bradley, what are you doing with my laptop bag?" He looked up with that same charming smile. "Oh, just making sure you didn't leave anything important behind. Your mom asked me to help pack your technical stuff since she doesn't understand computers. I didn't ask you to go through my business documents." "Relax, cuz. I'm not reading your corporate secrets, just trying to be helpful." He held up a folder containing client contracts. "Although I have to say, for someone who makes a living with computers, you don't seem to have much business coming in." Most of these contracts are pretty small. The rest of the family paused their treasure hunting to listen to Bradley's assessment of my apparent business failures. Actually, I said calmly, those are just the local contracts. My major clients are handled through a different file system. Sure they are, Bradley replied with a condescending chuckle. Look, Nick, there's no shame in struggling. We all have to start somewhere. Maybe when you get back on your feet, you can apply for a position at the bank. I might be able to put in a good word for you. How generous. That's what family is for. Of course, you'd need to work on your attitude first. Banks don't hire people who can't handle stress or criticism professionally. My mother looked up from packing my trophies. Bradley's right, Nick. Your reaction to my comments earlier was really inappropriate. I was just trying to help you understand that you need to take more responsibility for your life. Mom, I've been trying to tell you something important about our family's financial situation. Could we talk about that? Honey, I don't think this is the right time for another one of your schemes or excuses. We're all trying to help you pack and get organized. It's not a scheme. It's about your mortgage and the foreclosure notice you received. My father stood up from his box of my books. Nick, we appreciate your concern, but Bradley's already offered to help us with that situation. He understands banking and finance better than any of us. We don't need to worry you with adult financial matters. Adult financial matters? Son, I know you mean well, but you can barely afford to fix your own car. We can't take financial advice from someone who's struggling to pay his own bills. Emma looked up from my clothes. Maybe Nick could learn something from watching how real adults handle money problems. Bradley's always been good with financial planning. Very good, agreed Aunt Carol. He saved up for 2 years to buy that motorcycle. That takes real discipline and maturity. I looked around the room at my family members dividing up my belongings while dismissing my attempts to warn them about their financial crisis. They had complete faith in Bradley's ability to solve their problems, unaware that Bradley was the cause of their problems. I'm Bradley. I said carefully, why don't you tell everyone about your loan offer? The one that's going to solve their mortgage situation. Bradley's expression shifted slightly, but he maintained his confident demeanor. Well, it's still being finalized. Banking regulations require proper documentation for family loans. But I should be able to offer Uncle David a personal loan at a very reasonable interest rate that will get them caught up on their payments. What kind of interest rate? Probably around 8% annually. That's actually quite generous for an unsecured personal loan. I did the quick math. 8% annually on the $7,200 my family owed would result in Bradley collecting over $500 in interest payments, annually paid back to him using money he had stolen from their support payments in the first place. And what happens if they can't pay you back? Bradley shrugged. Then we'd have to work out some kind of arrangement. Maybe they could sign over partial ownership of the house as collateral. The audacity was breathtaking. Bradley was planning to steal my family's house through a predatory loan funded by money stolen from their own support payments. That's incredibly generous of you, Bradley, my mother said warmly. I don't know what we'd do without you. You might want to think carefully about that, I said quietly. Nick, enough, my father snapped. I appreciate that you're concerned, but you're clearly stressed about your own situation. Don't take it out on the people who are trying to help our family. Yes, Emma added. Maybe you should focus on solving your own problems instead of creating drama about everyone else's business. Creating drama. You've been acting strange all day, my mother observed. First the weird questions about money, then accusations about financial problems that don't exist. Maybe you should talk to someone about managing stress better. I realized that Bradley had been more effective than I imagined. Not only had he stolen from my family and manipulated them into seeing me as unreliable, but he had also planted seeds of doubt about my mental stability. Any attempts I made to expose the truth would be dismissed as evidence of my emotional instability and jealousy of their good fortune. Maybe Nick's just having trouble accepting that the rest of the family is doing well while he's struggling, suggested Bradley thoughtfully. It's natural to feel resentful when you see other people succeeding. The important thing is to channel those feelings into motivation for self-improvement. That's very wise, Aunt Carol agreed. Some people have trouble being happy for other people's success. I think Nick just needs some time to mature, Emma concluded. College really helped me develop a better perspective on family relationships and personal responsibility. I watched my sister praise her own maturity, which had been funded entirely by my fake scholarship programs, while criticizing my lack of perspective. I watched my parents accept Bradley's explanation that I was jealous of their success, which existed only because of my secret support. I watched my extended family nod in agreement about my character flaws while wearing jewelry and clothes purchased with money I had earned. And I realized that they were beyond redemption. These weren't good people who had been temporarily misled. These were fundamentally selfish, cruel people who felt entitled to judge and dismiss me while benefiting from my generosity. They weren't grateful for their good fortune. They believed they deserved it. They weren't concerned about my struggles. They were eager to use my apparent failures to feel better about themselves. But I was about to give them one last chance to show their true character. You know what? I said, sitting down on my bed next to the box of my childhood trophies. You're all right. I have been stressed about my financial situation, and I have been feeling resentful about other people's success. Maybe I should just accept that some people are better at managing money and making smart decisions. The room relaxed slightly. My apparent surrender to their logic seemed to satisfy everyone. That's a healthy attitude, my mother said approvingly. Admitting you have room for improvement is the first step toward personal growth. Exactly, Bradley agreed. And Nick, I want you to know that if you ever need financial advice or guidance, I'm here to help. I've learned a lot about money management through my work at the bank. I appreciate that, Bradley. Actually, could you help me understand something you mentioned, that my parents qualified for government assistance programs? How exactly do those work? Well, there are various federal and state programs designed to help families during economic hardship. Housing assistance, utility subsidies, things like that. The paperwork can be complicated, but I helped your parents navigate the application process. And the investment returns my father mentioned. Your dad was smart enough to put money into some technology sector investment several years ago. The returns have been providing steady monthly income that's helped supplement the assistance programs. I nodded thoughtfully. That's amazing. Monthly dividend payments from technology stocks plus government assistance that covers mortgage and utility payments. You must have really helped them optimize their financial situation. I try to look out for family, Bradley said modestly. It's been such a blessing, my mother added. We went from facing foreclosure to having a comfortable, stable income. Bradley really saved us. And the best part, my father chimed in, is that we don't have to rely on our children for support. We're completely self-sufficient now. Self-sufficient, I repeated slowly. That's wonderful. So if something happened to disrupt those income sources, you'd be able to manage on your own. Of course, my mother replied confidently. We've learned to live within our means and make smart financial decisions. That's what real adults do. Unlike some people, Emma added with a meaningful look in my direction. Well, I said, standing up and walking toward my bedroom door. In that case, I have something important to tell all of you. Something that's going to test exactly how self-sufficient and financially stable you really are. The family looked at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to annoyance. Nick, my father warned, if this is another one of your emotional outbursts about money, we really don't have time for it. Oh, you're going to want to make time for this one, Dad, because this affects every single person in this room. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. You see, there's something none of you know about your financial situation. Something that's about to change dramatically starting right now. Bradley's confident expression began to shift into something that looked like concern. What are you talking about, Nick? I looked around the room at my family, surrounded by my belongings. They had been dividing up wearing clothes and jewelry purchased with my money planning futures, funded by my generosity, completely convinced of their own success and my failure. I'm talking about the fact that you're all about to learn the difference between actual self-sufficiency and the comfortable illusion I've been providing for you. And then I began to tell them the truth. Mom, Dad, Emma, everyone, I said, looking around the room at my entire extended family. Before I leave this house, there's something you all need to understand about your financial situation. Something that's going to change everything, starting immediately. Nick, please. My mother sighed. We've already established that Bradley is handling our financial matters professionally. We don't need... There is no government assistance. I interrupted, my voice carrying clearly through the room. There are no investment returns. There are no dividend payments from technology stocks. Every single dollar that has kept this family afloat for the past 3 years has come directly from me. The room went completely silent. My father stopped folding my clothes. Emma's hands froze in the middle of going through my dresser. Aunt Carol set down the jewelry she had been examining. That's ridiculous, my mother said after a moment. Nick, we've seen the paperwork. We've received official documentation about our assistance programs. I created that paperwork, I replied calmly. I established fake foundations, shell companies, and fraudulent assistance programs to hide the fact that I was supporting all of you. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every car payment, every dollar of Emma's college tuition, all of it came from me. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, projecting the screen onto my laptop so everyone could see the transaction history. Midwest Community Mortgage, $2,400 monthly for 36 months. Commonwealth Edison, an average of $350 monthly. Riverside Ford Credit for Dad's truck payments, $420 monthly. Emma's tuition at State University, $18,000 per semester, transferred through fake scholarship foundations I created. The numbers filled the screen in an endless scroll of payments that totaled hundreds of thousands of dollars. My father's face had gone completely white. Nick, this can't be real. It's completely real, Dad. And it stops today, right now. I've already filed legal paperwork terminating all financial support and transferring legal responsibility back to you. But the government programs, my mother whispered. The assistance applications Bradley helped us file. There were no applications, I said, looking directly at Bradley, whose charming smile had completely disappeared. Bradley never helped you apply for anything, but he did help himself to a significant portion of the money I was sending to support you. That's a lie, Bradley said quickly. Uncle David, don't listen to him. He's having some kind of breakdown. This is exactly the kind of behavior I was worried about. Bradley, I continued, has been systematically stealing from your support payments for the past 6 months. The mortgage payments you think you've been receiving, 70% went into Bradley's gambling accounts. The utility assistance half was redirected to fund his Las Vegas vacations. In total, Bradley has stolen over $70,000 that was meant to keep you housed and fed. I switched screens on my laptop to show Bradley's banking activity and gambling records. Paradise Casino, $12,000 in withdrawals. Las Vegas Vacation, $8,000. New motorcycle, $15,000. Sports betting accounts, over $20,000 in deposits. All funded with money stolen from your family's support payments. Bradley's face had gone from confident to desperate. You're insane, Nick. You can't just throw around accusations like this. I've been trying to help this family. Have you, Bradley? Is that why you redirected their mortgage payments for 3 months, causing them to face foreclosure? Is that why you planned to offer them a predatory loan, using their own stolen support money, and then charge them interest on it? My mother stood up shakily. Bradley, is this true? Of course it's not true. Nick is making this up because he's jealous of our success. He's been spying on our financial accounts and creating these fake records to make himself look important. These aren't fake records, I said, pulling out printed bank statements and transaction logs. These are official banking documents showing 3 years of systematic support and 6 months of systematic theft. Every payment is documented, every transaction is traceable, every dollar is accounted for. I handed the documents to my father, who began reading them with growing horror. David, I continued, you're going to receive a foreclosure notice next week because Bradley has been stealing your mortgage payments. Your truck is going to be repossessed because he's been pocketing half the car payments. Your utilities are going to be shut off because he's been redirecting the money to fund his gambling addiction. This is insane, Emma said, though her voice lacked conviction. Nick, why would you make something like this up? I'm not making it up, Emma. Your full scholarship to State University never existed. I created fake academic foundations and merit award programs to pay your tuition without you knowing the money came from me. You've been attending college on my dime while believing you earned it through academic achievement. Emma sat down hard on my desk chair, staring at the documents I had handed her. The Patterson Academic Excellence Foundation doesn't exist. The Midwest Merit Scholarship Program doesn't exist. The Technology Innovation Grant that paid for your laptop and textbooks doesn't exist. I created them all to hide the fact that I was funding your education. But I earned those scholarships, Emma whispered. I had the grades, I wrote the essays. You did earn them, Emma. I made sure the fake selection criteria matched your actual achievements. But the money came from me, not from academic institutions that never existed. My father looked up from the bank statements, his face pale and shocked. Nick, this shows payments going back 3 years. You've been paying for everything. Everything, Dad. The house, the cars, the utilities, Emma's education, even the Christmas and birthday gifts you thought you were buying with investment returns. All of it came from my consulting business while I lived in a modest apartment and drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic. But why? My mother asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. Why didn't you tell us? Because I knew you'd refuse the help out of pride, and I couldn't stand watching you lose everything. I thought I was protecting your dignity while keeping the family together. And you never said anything. I never said anything because I wanted you to maintain your independence and self-respect. I never expected to be publicly humiliated and told to leave because I was supposedly a financial burden on the family. The room fell completely silent except for the sound of Emma crying quietly. So when you asked for $50 for car repairs, my father began. I was testing you. I wanted to see if the family I had been secretly supporting for 3 years would help me with a small emergency. You refused and lectured me about financial responsibility while wearing clothes and jewelry I paid for. Bradley made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. Even if Nick did help with some payments, that doesn't prove I stole anything. He's paranoid and unstable. He's been tracking our family's private financial information without permission. Bradley, I said, turning to face him directly. I have security camera footage from Paradise Casino showing you gambling with money that was supposed to pay my family's mortgage. I have hotel receipts from Las Vegas paid for with redirected utility money. I have purchase records for your motorcycle bought with stolen family support funds. I have detailed financial records showing exactly when you gained access to my family's account numbers and began redirecting their payments. I pulled up the final piece of evidence on my laptop screen. Most importantly, I have recorded conversations from earlier today where you admitted to intercepting payments, threatened to frame me as financially abusive, and detailed your plan to loan my family their own stolen money at 8% interest. Bradley's face collapsed completely. You recorded our conversation. Every word. Including your confession that you manipulated my mother into believing I was jealous and resentful of their success. Including your threat to destroy my reputation if I exposed your theft. Including your plan to eventually gain control of their house through predatory lending. The room erupted in shocked voices as the family members began to understand the full scope of what had been happening. Bradley stole from us, Aunt Carol asked incredulously. While we were criticizing Nick for not helping the family, Uncle Tom added. While Nick was actually paying for everything, Jennifer whispered. I need to sit down, my mother said, lowering herself onto my bed. Nick, I called you a financial leech, in front of everyone, while you were secretly supporting our entire family, You did, Mom. You told me to stop relying on the family while I was actually supporting the family. You refused to help me with $50 while living in a house I was paying for. And Bradley, my father said slowly, you were stealing from us while pretending to help us. Bradley's confident demeanor had completely crumbled. It's not what it looks like. I was going to pay everything back. I just needed some short-term funds to cover some investments that went wrong. Gambling debts, I corrected. Not investments. Gambling debts that you covered by stealing from your own family's security. And you were going to charge us interest on our own stolen money? My mother asked in disbelief. I was trying to help. I thought if I could just get back to even I could repay everything and no one would have to know. By letting us face foreclosure, my father demanded. By planning to take ownership of our house. The family's shock was turning to anger as they realized the full extent of Bradley's betrayal and their own mistreatment of me. Nick, Emma said through her tears, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. We all thought, we believed. You believed what you wanted to believe, Emma. That you were successful and independent while your brother was a failure. It was easier to accept that narrative than to question how your comfortable lifestyle was possible. But we didn't know, my mother protested. How could we have known? You could have questioned how a family facing foreclosure suddenly received perfect financial assistance with no paperwork or requirements. You could have wondered how Dad's supposed technology investments provided exactly enough monthly income to cover your specific bills. You could have been curious about why your good fortune coincided perfectly with my career success. But you didn't want to know, because knowing would have complicated your sense of independence. I closed my laptop and looked around the room at my family. So here's what happens next. All financial support stops immediately. The mortgage payments, utility assistance, car payments, and college funding end today. You have 1 week to make arrangements for your actual financial responsibilities before the foreclosure proceedings begin. 1 week, my father asked desperately. Nick, we can't possibly. You're self-sufficient. Remember, you told me just an hour ago that you were completely independent and didn't need to rely on your children for support. Now you get to prove it. But Nick, my mother pleaded, surely we can work something out. We're family. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. I looked at the woman who had publicly humiliated me in front of 20 relatives, who had refused to lend me $50 while living in a house I paid for, who had spent the evening criticizing my character while praising my thief cousin. We can discuss the possibility of rebuilding our relationship, Mom. But first, you're all going to experience what it's actually like to be financially responsible for yourselves. You're going to learn the difference between earned success and supported comfort. And you're going to face the consequences of your choices without my protection. I picked up my duffel bag and headed for the door. Nick, wait! Emma called after me. Where are you going? What are we supposed to do? I turned back to look at my family one last time. They were sitting among the boxes of my belongings they had been dividing up, surrounded by evidence of their own ingratitude and cruelty, finally understanding the true source of their comfort and security. Emma, you're going to do exactly what you've been telling me to do all day. You're going to take responsibility for your own lives, learn to manage money properly, and stop relying on other people to solve your problems. And Bradley, my father asked. I looked at my cousin, who was staring at the floor in complete defeat. Bradley is going to federal prison for wire fraud, bank fraud, and theft of over $70,000. The FBI will be contacting him Monday morning. Nick, please, Bradley said desperately. I'll pay everything back. I'll make this right. Don't destroy my life over this. Bradley, you destroyed your own life when you chose to steal from your family and manipulate them into hating their own son. You destroyed your life when you decided to profit from their desperation while letting them face foreclosure. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply removing the protection that allowed you to avoid the consequences of your choices. I walked out of my childhood bedroom for the last time, leaving my family to confront the reality of their situation without me. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I could hear them beginning to argue among themselves. voices raised in accusation, denial, and panic as they realized the magnitude of their crisis. But for the first time in 3 years, their crisis was truly their own. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new downtown office when my assistant buzzed me with a call. "Nick, there's a Susan Patterson online too. She says she's your mother." I hadn't spoken to my family since Thanksgiving. My lawyer Sarah had handled all communications regarding Bradley's prosecution and the family's financial transition, but I had been wondering when this call would come. "Hello, Mom?" "Nick, honey, thank you for taking my call. I wasn't sure you would." Her voice sounded different. Older, more tired, but also somehow more genuine than I remembered. "How are things going?" "They've been challenging, but we're managing. Your father found a job at the new logistics center, and I'm working part-time at the community center. Emma transferred to the local community college, and she's working nights to pay her tuition. And the house. We lost it. We're renting a small apartment on the south side. It's not much, but it's ours. We're paying our own bills for the first time in 3 years." I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that they were surviving sadness about their losses, and something else I couldn't quite identify. "I'm sorry it worked out that way, Mom." "Don't be sorry, Nick. We needed to learn how to take care of ourselves. We needed to understand what we had been taking for granted." There was a long pause before she continued. "Nick, I called to ask if you would meet with us. Not to ask for money or help, but to apologize. Really apologize. Your father and Emma and I have been going to family counseling, and we've learned some difficult things about ourselves and our behavior." "What kind of things?" "We learned that we treated you terribly. Not just on Thanksgiving, but for years. We took your success for granted. We dismissed your career. We criticized your choices. And we never once asked if you needed support or encouragement. We were selfish, ungrateful people who felt entitled to judge the person who was keeping us afloat." Her voice broke slightly. "We learned that when someone loves you enough to sacrifice their own comfort for your well-being, and you respond with cruelty and dismissal, you don't deserve their continued love. We learned that we nearly lost the most generous, caring person in our family because we were too proud and stupid to appreciate him." "Mom?" "Let me finish, honey. We also learned that what happened with Bradley wasn't just theft. It was a symptom of our family's dysfunction. We were so eager to believe in easy solutions and magical windfalls that we never questioned obvious lies. We were so comfortable with unearned benefits that we never wondered where they really came from. We created an environment where someone like Bradley could manipulate us because we wanted to believe we were successful without effort." I found myself genuinely impressed by her self-reflection. "What happened to Bradley?" "He was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. His wife divorced him and he lost everything. But Nick, I need you to know that we don't see him as the villain in this story. We see ourselves as the villains. Bradley took advantage of our greed and laziness, but we created the conditions that made his crimes possible. That's a mature way to look at it. The counselor helped us understand that we were living in a fantasy world where we deserved success without effort, where we could treat people badly without consequences, and where someone would always rescue us from our poor choices. Bradley didn't create that fantasy. He just profited from it. And now we're learning to live in the real world. Your father gets up at 5 in the morning to work in a warehouse, and he's proud of the paycheck he earns. I'm learning bookkeeping skills so I can advance at the community center. Emma is discovering that paying for her own education makes her value it more than when she thought it was free. That sounds like positive growth. It is. But Nick, the most important thing we've learned is that we lost something precious when we lost your trust and respect. We had a son who loved us enough to work himself exhausted to keep us comfortable, and we repaid that love with contempt and cruelty. I could hear her crying softly. We know we can't undo what we did. We know we can't take back the things we said or the way we treated you. But we're hoping that maybe someday we can earn the right to be your family again. Not your dependents or your responsibilities, but your family. What would that look like, Mom? It would look like us proving that we've changed, that we can be supportive, grateful people who appreciate what we have and treat each other with kindness. It would look like us building a relationship based on love and respect instead of need and entitlement. And if I'm not ready for that, then we'll wait. We'll keep working on ourselves, keep growing as people, and hope that someday you'll see that we're worth a second chance. But Nick, we won't pressure you, and we won't expect anything. We've learned that love and trust have to be earned, not demanded. I thought about the past 6 months. My business had expanded significantly without the financial drain of supporting my family. I had moved to a nicer apartment, upgraded my car, and even started dating someone I met through professional networking. But I had also missed them despite everything that had happened. Mom, I'd be willing to meet for coffee, just to talk. But I need you to understand that rebuilding trust will take time. We understand completely. We're not expecting forgiveness or immediate reconciliation. We just want the chance to show you that we've learned and grown. What about Emma and Dad? They're both committed to making amends. Emma wrote you a letter that she's been too nervous to send. Your father has been attending a support group for people who've damaged family relationships through pride and selfishness. A support group for that exists. Apparently, we weren't the only family who nearly destroyed themselves through ingratitude and entitlement. The counselor says it's more common than people think. We arranged to meet the following Saturday at a neutral coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, I found my family already seated at a corner table, looking nervous but determined. They looked different. My father had lost weight and appeared younger somehow, despite being dressed in work clothes instead of the expensive casual wear I had been buying him. My mother looked tired, but alert, engaged in a way I hadn't seen in years. Emma seemed more mature, more focused, less entitled than the college student who had criticized my financial irresponsibility. The conversation was awkward at first, but gradually became more natural as we talked about their new lives, their challenges, and their discoveries about themselves. They didn't make excuses or try to minimize their behavior. They acknowledged the full extent of their cruelty and ingratitude without trying to deflect blame. More importantly, they shared what they had learned about appreciating what they had, supporting each other through difficulties, and building relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Nick, Emma said toward the end of our conversation, I need you to know that I understand now what you sacrificed for us. I'm paying my own tuition by working 40 hours a week while taking classes full-time. It's exhausting and stressful, and it makes me realize how much work you must have done to fund my education, while I criticized you for not being successful enough. I also understand, my father added, what it must have felt like to watch us enjoy a comfortable lifestyle while calling you a failure. To work 16-hour days so we could live well while we lectured you about responsibility and effort. And I understand, my mother concluded, what it must have felt like to love people who didn't appreciate your love, to sacrifice for people who took your sacrifice for granted, to protect people who couldn't even see that they needed protection. Over the following months, we began rebuilding our relationship slowly and carefully. They didn't ask for money or assistance, but they did ask for my advice, my company, and my perspective on their new challenges. They shared their successes and failures honestly, without trying to impress me or hide their struggles. Most importantly, they demonstrated through their actions that they had fundamentally changed their approach to family relationships. They supported each other through difficulties without expecting someone else to solve their problems. They celebrated each other's achievements without feeling entitled to share in the benefits. They treated each other with kindness and respect, even when stressed or frustrated. A year after that first coffee meeting, I helped my father move into a small house he had saved up to buy. Not by giving him money, but by providing advice on inspections and negotiations. I attended Emma's graduation from community college, where she had earned a degree in accounting while working full-time. I celebrated my mother's promotion to office manager at the community center, a position she had earned through dedication and skill development. And gradually I began to trust that they had learned the most important lesson of all, that family relationships are built on mutual love, respect, and appreciation, not on financial obligation or dependency. The experience taught me something valuable too. I learned that protecting people from the consequences of their choices doesn't actually protect them at all. It enables them to remain immature, selfish, and ungrateful. Real love sometimes requires allowing people to struggle and learn and grow, even when watching them struggle is painful. I learned that generosity without boundaries becomes enabling, that sacrifice without acknowledgement becomes martyrdom, and that love without respect becomes exploitation. Most importantly, I learned that the people who truly deserve your support are those who appreciate it, reciprocate it, and never take it for granted. My family learned to become those people, and our relationship today is stronger and more genuine than it ever was when I was secretly funding their comfortable illusions. So I have a question for everyone listening to this story. Have you ever found yourself supporting someone who took your generosity for granted? Someone who criticized you while benefiting from your kindness? How did you handle that situation? Did you set boundaries, or did you continue enabling their behavior? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story helped you think about your own family relationships or financial boundaries in a new way, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself, while keeping your heart open to the people who prove they deserve your trust. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your generosity is valuable and should be appreciated, that your kindness deserves to be reciprocated, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow people to learn from their own mistakes. Remember, true family isn't about obligation or dependency. It's about mutual love, respect, and support. Don't settle for anything less. Share this story with someone who might need to hear it, and remember that you deserve to be appreciated for the love and support you give to others. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.